All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our BCBA exam practice question series. We're going through the next set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out behavioranalyst.study.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack and practice exams, which are now also available in digital format. When you pass, please let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. Joe has a big research presentation coming up at a prominent conference. Joe is quite nervous about speaking in front of this many people on this particular topic. He asks his research partner if they can practice together, and the partner agrees. Joe asks his partner to change random things in the room each day they practice, so the room is never quite the same. What is Joe attempting to use? So we're looking at Joe's behavior, and what do we know about Joe? Start by asking yourself, what do we know? Our first move is not jumping to the answer choices after we're done reading the question. Our first move is understanding the question. So what do we know? We know Joe has a big presentation at this conference. He's nervous about speaking in front of this many people on a particular topic. So he asks his partner if they can practice together, and the partner agrees. So Joe is trying to prepare for this presentation at this conference by practicing, and he's going to do that in order to hope he generalizes his skills. When you're practicing something, it's typically in a training environment, and generalization occurs when you take what you've trained and practiced for to the real environment. And Joe specifically is trying to use a generalization strategy. Remember, we have specific generalization strategies. We plan for generalization. We don't hope. Hope is not a strategy. So in this case, Joe asks his partner to change random things in the room each day they practice, so the room is never quite the same. Now, what is Joe trying to accomplish here? What Joe is doing is he's changing unimportant stimuli or random stimuli in the room, so the room is a little different each time. He doesn't want his behavior to come under the control of any irrelevant stimuli in the room. And so what is this called in terms of our generalization strategies? Well, A, train loosely, is exactly what he's doing. When you train loosely, you start changing random things or irrelevant things or small things in the environment, the way you present things, stimuli that aren't crucial to the success. Because if you look at B, and this confuses people, program common stimuli, it's different from A, because programming common stimuli is you're taking stimuli that are actually relevant to engaging in the response in the generalization setting. Trained loosely, the stimuli that are being changed and altered aren't necessarily crucial for success in the generalization environment. We're just trying to avoid behavior coming under the control of these irrelevant stimuli. And then C and D both have to do with contingencies. Joe is not discussing how he wants to be reinforced or how he wants his partner to react, and he's not discussing his contingency strategy. He's talking about the stimuli, the generalization stimuli that he has to deal with. And so what he wants to do is make sure he's not getting, in a sense, too comfortable with the one environment. So he wants the environment to slightly change each time so he's prepared when he gets to this brand new presentation environment. So Joe is attempting to use A, train loosely. Claire spotted a yellow school bus, pointed and said yellow. Her teacher gave her a huge smile and said, "That is yellow." Now, Claire is pointing at every vehicle and saying, "Yellow." What has occurred? Very common with young children. If you work with young children, you've seen this before. You teach them something new, or they do something new, you react very excitedly, and what do? They start doing it over and over and over again. Attention-based behavior, very, very prevalent in young kids for this reason. In this case, what do we know? And we know Claire spotted a yellow school bus, pointed and said yellow. Great, she identified yellow. The teacher gave her a huge smile and said, "That is yellow." She got very excited, delivered a reinforcing consequence. As a result, Claire is now pointing at every vehicle and saying yellow. So is Claire's behavior happening too often? It is. Is it happening at inappropriate times? It is. Every single vehicle should not be yellow. She's using yellow too frequently. So we can say with pretty good confidence, Claire is overgeneralizing the term yellow. If we look at our answer choices, we have overgeneralization as C, but we also have stimulus generalization and response generalization. Is Claire doing either of those? Well, we know with stimulus generalization, we have a single response that occurs in the presence of multiple stimuli. In this case, we have a response, yellow, that's occurring in the presence of all these different vehicles. So yes, Claire is generalizing stimuli, but she's also overgeneralizing, which is an issue. So Claire is doing both of these. We now need to, or the teacher needs to, work on Claire starting to discriminate between these vehicles. And so she's only saying yellow in the presence of things that are actually yellow. Tiny Tim celebrates Christmas Eve at his grandparents' house every year. They always eat baked ham, cornbread, and macaroni. This year, Tiny Tim tells his parents that he is sick of baked ham and asks if they can make something else. What is likely causing Tiny Tim to make this request? So what do we know about Tiny Tim? Well, Tiny Tim celebrates Christmas Eve at his grandparents' house, and every year, baked ham, cornbread, and macaroni. This year, Tiny Tim tells his parents, you know what? He is sick of the ham. I want something else. So think about how this might apply in your situation as a therapist or a teacher or whatever job you work. And remember, we never want to necessarily draw from our own experiences because what matters is the information in front of us. But when you have situations, and most situations they give you are going to be more real life scenarios, not always necessarily clinical, you can try to form it or shape it in your mind into a clinical scenario. So if we think about Tiny Tim saying, I'm sick of baked ham, I want something else. Let's think about, let's say we give a client a toy truck every time they're done working. And today the client tells you, I'm sick of the toy truck, I want something else. What would likely cause Tiny Tim or the client to make that request? Well, if you look at A, satiation, satiation says the individual has gotten too much of something. It no longer holds value in the current time. And in this case, Tiny Tim has had so much baked ham every year, he's done with it. Our other example, the client has gotten the truck over and over again. They're satiated. In order to remove satiation or reduce satiation, we have to start depriving them. And so satiation and deprivation are kind of a tug of war, right? A back and forth. You get deprived, so you give. You get satiated, so you take. Or you withhold. Tiny Tim's not deprived of baked ham. He's had too much. He's satiated. Resurgence is one of those words that has nothing to do with this particular question. And this is a good example. I like resurgence because it has to do with extinction, but we don't use it a lot. And so when people aren't fluent, they gravitate towards resurgence because it sounds really good. It's a good example of why fluency is so important. You shouldn't be picking answer choices because you don't know what they mean. If you're picking answer choices that because you don't know what they mean, that's a big issue. You have to go back and work on your fluency. And then D, prompts. I can't really identify any prompts in this question that are relevant to Tiny Tim making the request based on information. He gets baked ham every year. And so he's been satiated on the baked ham, which led him to say, can I have something else? So what likely caused Tiny Tim to make this request? A, satiation. Consider the following examples. Which example most likely has both point-to-point correspondence and formal similarity? All right, we have a verbal operant question where we are identifying the two components of a verbal operant, formal similarity and point-to-point correspondence. Now, these terms are very important to know. They're hard to learn at first, but practice, and you'll never miss these questions. The point-to-point correspondence, let's start there. What does that mean? Point-to-point correspondence says the speaker and the listener, the message is identical. It's the exact same. Formal similarity says the message is delivered the same way. So the delivery is the same. So if we're going to pick one or an example that has both, it must mean the message is identical and the way the message is delivered is identical. So A, you scroll by an ad on Instagram and you read it to your friend out loud. So if you're reading it to your friend out loud, there's a good chance it has point-to-point correspondence. It's the same message, but the message was initially delivered via a text ad or you reading the ad or seeing the ad, and then you read it to your friend out loud. The message delivery is different, so it is not formally similar. B, you pull up at the drive-thru window and order a Jimmy John's turkey sub. So you spoke the message, and let's say it was maybe an MO, or you read the menu. Either way, the delivery of the message, not the same. If you read it identical, it could have point to point correspondence, but the message delivery isn't identical. It's not formally similar. See, your mom texts you, hey, and you text back, hey. What's our message? Hey. So the messages are identical. What's the delivery? Text, text, formally similar. See, looks pretty good. D, you eagerly take notes as you watch a presentation on applied behavior analysis. What's the message? The message is the presentation. Somebody's delivering the message and you're writing it down. Formal similarity is not there. So what example has both point to point and formal similarity is C. So again, ask yourself, is my message identical? And is the delivery of the message identical? And then pick your answer. A great way to learn a new song on the piano is to start by playing the song at a slow tempo until you master it, and then increasing the tempo gradually and mastering at each new tempo until you reach the actual tempo of the song, which is faster than the first tempo you set. What teaching method is similar to the strategy? So looking for a teaching method. What do we know about the question? We don't have a specific learner here. It's just a strategy. So the strategy is you're learning something new. You start by playing at a slow tempo until you master it, gradually increasing that tempo, mastering each time, and then reaching the actual tempo, which is faster than the first tempo. So essentially, you're reinforcing approximations because we have shaping in two ways. We have A, shaping across topographies, B, shaping within topographies. When you shape across topographies, you're trying to change how the behavior looks with approximations. When you're shaping within topographies, that topography is not changing. You're just changing a dimension of it. In this case, the way you play the song doesn't change. The notes aren't changing, but you're trying to speed it up by speeding up the tempo. You're not changing how it looks, you're changing the speed. So we're shaping within your topography. Not a level system. A level system has to do with a token economy, and it's not a high P request sequence. With a high P request sequence, we give a lot of high probability request followed by that low probability request. Now what's happening here? We're shaping approximations. Specifically, we're keeping the same topography. We're just trying to speed it up until we get it to the right speed that we desire. A group of children just learned that red means stop when used on a stop sign or a street light. Now the teacher is using a red card to signal students that it is time to stop during class. If red is evoking the behavior, what would this stimulus class be considered? So we're talking stimulus classes here. And stimulus classes can be tricky because stimulus classes can be described in multiple ways. What do we know? We know children just learn red means stop. Okay, so stop sign or street light. So that's already a stimulus class. Stop sign, street lights, they're red. Red means stop. They evoke that behavior. Now, the teacher's using a red card to signal to students it's time to stop during class. So that red card has now joined stop sign and street light in that stimulus class, and they're all evoking the same behavior. The first things first, if they're all evoking the same behavior or having the same effect on behavior, they're going to be a functional stimulus class. We just know that. So B is for sure. Now, what about C, formal? Do they have something in common, or is something that looks, or the topography, of the stimulus what is causing the response to change? And yes, because red, they're all sharing this characteristic of red. If they share the characteristic of red, they're formally similar. So they have formal similarity. Why are they not arbitrary? Well, arbitrary means they don't have common characteristics. If we think about, let's say, and this is not the best example, but let's think about vegetables, right? If we look at a cucumber and a carrot, they don't really share characteristics, but they're both vegetables. We see them, we say vegetables. So those are arbitrary and functional. They could be formal because they do share common characteristics, but those characteristics aren't evoking the response. What's evoking the response is the fact that we know they're vegetables. So it's more of an arbitrary stimulus class. You can see how it gets confusing. Hone in, go watch my video on stimulus class. and understand what makes something arbitrary, what makes it formal, and what makes it functional, and how does it work when they get combined together. You can see it's difficult to explain, it's harder to understand. Go watch my video and make sure you understand the difference between these and how they commingle together and why we can pick both a functional and a formal stimulus class at the same time. Thank you for watching. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials. Please subscribe if you have not already. When you pass, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.